All right, y'all, what's going on? Welcome to the Monday night live stream. We're getting on into it. All right, y'all. How's everybody doing tonight? Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me clearly, if I'm coming in sounding nice. Tonight I got my ginger turmeric tea as usual. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty clear-headed, focused. It was a productive day today. Had a good session in the gym today. And I got into some weight that I haven't gotten into in a few years. As some of you may know, I just recently started back in the gym towards the end of September this year. And prior to that, I was only training with bodyweight and resistance bands for the last 2 years. So I went quite a long time without lifting any conventional weights. It was just resistance bands and bodyweight. And I joined the gym back in September, the last week of September. And you know, coming towards the, what is this? The last week of November, just about. And definitely putting up some good numbers in the gym. So I'm pretty excited about that. I back squatted today, you know, got onto the barbell today and squatted 225 for 8 reps pretty easily. On the first set, so it wasn't even a warm-up set. I just jumped into the gym, did some leg curls, and then got under the bar, put 225 on the bar, and hit a quick 8 reps. And I was pretty surprised because the movement felt smooth. It felt good. So, but anyways, enough about me. We see some ones in the chat. Y'all hear me clearly here. That's what I'm talking about. What's going on, D after 50? What's going on, D? Melissa, Dario, what's going on, y'all? We got my folks in here. John Green, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Vegan Knowledge, JJ, how you doing? Good to see you in here. We got Mama Dukes in here. Therese, what's going on? How you doing? Good to see you in here. So tonight, got to have an important conversation about carbs, right? And the reason why I really wanted to talk about this tonight is because I've had quite a few people reach out to me after coming off of a keto diet and a carnivore diet. I actually had a lot of people come to me like, yeah, you know, I tried a carnivore diet and I'm having problems with, you know, my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my blood sugar. I'm getting really bad muscle cramps. I'm really fatigued. My sleep quality is really poor. I don't know what's going on. I saw your video about fruit and I haven't been eating carbs for a really long time and I'm not feeling well. And I've been hearing about this lately. A lot of people are reaching out to me and booking calls with me and talking about this. So I'm like, you know what? Let me talk about it, right? As we know, there's a lot of media about, you know, cutting carbohydrates out of your diet and having a very cheese-rich, butter-rich, meat-rich diet. And, you know, carbs are the enemy and carbs are not necessary and all this kind of stuff, right? It worked until it didn't. Yeah, exactly. And this is essentially what happens, right? It's because, so when I talk about things, I talk about things from a principled perspective. And the principled perspective is every decision you make is a trade. You're trading one thing for another thing, right? Everything you do, every change you make, it's a trade. And there's some type of negotiation that comes with that trade. And ultimately what you want to do is you want to make the best trades available, right? So you want to get the most upside with the least amount of downside. This is essentially what the deal is, right? And so you have a lot of people saying, you know, you have YouTube channels and they're getting on and they're saying, hey, you know, When I cut vegetables out of my diet and I cut all the carbohydrates out of my diet, I felt wonderful. My joint pain went away, my skin cleared up, and all this kind of stuff. But I'm having people reach out to me personally and say, "Hey, I did a carnivore diet for the last 6 months, and I've been, it was great in the beginning, and now it's progressively getting worse. I'm getting a lot of muscle cramps, and I don't understand why. I hit a plateau as far as my weight loss is concerned. I'm getting a lot of gas and bloating. This kind of thing. I don't know what to do." Right? Poor sleep quality, libido issues, testosterone issues, kidney issues. Kidney issues is actually a big one, right? And so I'm like, what, let's talk about that, because it's getting dangerous now. People are making some dangerous trades here. Do you think coconut yogurt daily is too much fat? No, not at all. It's too much saturated fat? No, I mean, the saturated fat content in coconut yogurt isn't really that particularly high, actually. It's mostly polyunsaturated fats and whatnot. A1C went pre-diabetic. Yeah. And so the question is, right, because I hear, a lot of carnivore and keto influencers say this thing about there is no need for carbs. Carbohydrates are not essential to the human diet. You don't need carbs ever at all, right? Which is a very strong claim to make, right? And it's a cartoonish claim to make. And the reason for that is because it's not really a nuanced take. I would say, like, that would be like me saying, hey, you don't need any fruits, you don't need any fats in your diet whatsoever. It's a bit obscene, right? Now, you need carbohydrates, you need fats, and you need proteins in your diet. You need all three macros in your diet. The question is, in what ratio and what food choices, okay? I don't like to talk about diet particularly through the lens of macros, at least not entirely, right? We can have the conversation about macros, but at the end of the day, food choice matters because each individual food holds its own set of enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, right? And a big part of nutrition is those micronutrients, and you have to make food choices based on that, right? And so that's something that I wanted to address today. So what I want to start with is there's this doctor, and he's real big on like, carbohydrates are completely needless, and the natural human diet is a fat dominant diet. And I want you to hear the way that he explains it, because the way that he explains it in particular it's interesting, I guess, to say the least, but it's a little odd, right? But I'm going to get into why that is here. So hold on a second. Let me turn this on. Hold on a second. What you said? Do you think different races should eat differently? Do I think you mean race like Negroid, Mongoloid, Caucasoid, like that kind of thing? So I think that you should eat according to your species. Right, that's the main thing. You should eat according to your species. Now, melanin may play a difference in how much of certain things you need, but I don't think that your food choices are going to be vastly different, around racial demographics, right? So melanin plays a different role, but it's not going to be like, oh, well, you're brown, so you need to eat completely different foods, or you have a lack of skin pigmentation, so you need to eat an entirely different way, right? I wouldn't really go that far. I didn't know, however, type 2 is caused by insulin resistance due to fat particles in the muscle and liver cells. When we clear the high saturated fat, we can unclog the drain to let the sugar in the cells. Yeah, I mean, more or less, right? And I can get into explaining that here. So y'all folks, y'all been watching my content here and doing some digging. So I appreciate that. All right, hold on. Let me switch to something right here. I want y'all to hear this. All right, hold on.
Professor Tim Noakes. All right, man. You are an authority when it comes down.
Let
to
me
exercise,
raise this.
low-carb, fat adaptation. But I have to ask you before we dive into anything. What did you have for breakfast today, man?
For breakfast, I always have the same. I have a little biscuit with cheese and butter on it. That's breakfast. Occasionally we have eggs and bacon, but today I had a very gentle day. I was more fasting than eating meals.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, mine was.
I'm
All right.
just getting ready to eat.
Can y'all hear that clearly? I just want to know first if y'all can hear this video that I'm playing clearly. This video clip. Let me make sure the audio level's right on it. Hold on.
Dinner now, which will be chicken and some other form of maybe sweet potato. That'll be what it is. Yeah.
Ah, perfect. That's my jam as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to jump right into the world of exercise.
All right, put a 1 in the chat if y'all can hear that clearly. Let me restart this over again. Hold on. Much better. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me play this here.
Professor Tim Noakes. All right, man. You are an authority when it comes down to exercise, low carb, fat adaptation. But I have to ask you before we dive into anything. What did you have for breakfast today, man?
For breakfast, I always have the same. I have a little biscuit with cheese and butter on it. That's breakfast. Occasionally we have eggs and bacon, but today I had a very gentle day. I was more fasting than eating meals.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, mine was.
But I'm just getting ready to eat dinner now, which will be chicken and some other form of maybe sweet potato. That'll be what it is. Yeah.
Ah, perfect. That's my jam as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to jump right into the world.
Somebody said the music is too loud. Is the music too loud? Let me know if the music is too loud so I can turn it down.
World of exercise, low carb, exercise in a depleted state. And what I mean by that is the idea of being fat adapted. It comes under fire all the time because, opponents of this world will say that, well, fat adaptation doesn't really matter. Metabolic flexibility doesn't really exist because it's just occurs through training. But you and I have created a lot of content, and I know you've talked a lot about this surrounding the world of fat adaptation. And I think there are some misnomers out there. Can you give just a blanket overhead view of what fat adaptation is in an athlete?
Well,
Okay, so he's going to explain the difference between, I guess, glucose or carb adaptation and fat adaptation. So this is the thing in particular that I really want to talk about, because, and this kind of gets into the media literacy thing and the way that people describe things, and to see if the logic really follows, right? So just pay attention to this.
adaptation is the natural state of humans. That's what we evolved. We evolved like that because we weren't exposed to carbohydrates. Now, as soon as you start eating carbohydrates, you limit yourself to burn carbohydrates. Why? Because
now, the thing he said, now, fat adaptation is the natural state of human beings. Now, this is an odd claim to make, right? Because if you're going to say that fat adaptation is the natural state, well, then the question is, well, as opposed to what? Right? So I want to see if he quantifies that. Right, so hold on a second here.
the body has to get rid of the carbohydrates to regulate your blood glucose concentration. That's the fundamental feature of carbohydrates. You do need some for your brain function, no argument. You do need for kidney function, no argument. However, the main function, the main reason you burn carbohydrates is simply to get rid of it. So anytime you're eating a lot of carbs and storing it in your muscles and the liver, the brain says, oops, we've got too much carbs on board. We must get rid of it because this person is going to eat more carbs.
So that's kind of odd, right? Because, so basically, he's framing carbohydrates as like a waste product that your body just needs to get rid of. It's a very odd way to frame it, right? It's kind of like the only reason for putting gas in your gas tank is to burn the gas. It's odd, right? It's a weird way of framing it. Now, this is a doctor. I don't really particularly know what he's a doctor of, But that claim, it doesn't sound right. The only reason why your body burns carbs is to get rid of it. Now, any doctor should know that carbohydrates are a fuel source. It's not a waste product, right? So you don't burn it to get rid of it. It's not a waste product. It's a source of fuel in the same way that like electricity or gasoline is a source of fuel. So now what he's saying is that your body pretty much stores, your body doesn't store carbs. Your body breaks down the carbohydrates into glucose. That glucose gets stored inside all of the cells in your body, right? So what he's talking about is he's talking about, it's going to your brain, it's going to your muscle tissue, it's going to your liver, things like that, right? He's already said that you need carbs to power your brain and you need carbs to, for your kidneys and all that kind of stuff, right? So he's kind of already seeding the argument. So the way that he's framing is a bizarre framing. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So the glaring thing that he's saying here doesn't make any sense. Is the only reason why your body burns carbs is to get rid of them. It's an odd way to frame it. It's very bizarre. All right, so let's continue to hear see his response.
2 or 3 hours, and we have to have a place where you can store it. So my belief is that we store carbohydrate in muscle and liver purely to regulate your blood glucose, to keep it as low as possible without having to spike too much insulin to drive it into the cells and so on.
So the only reason why your body stores, he keeps saying stores carbohydrates in muscle. Your body doesn't store carbohydrates inside muscle. But the reason why your body stores glucose inside your muscle tissue is just because it just needs somewhere to go to regulate your blood sugar. So this is odd, right? It's kind of like, you could say the same thing for fat, right? I guess your body stores fat inside your fat cells because it just needs a place to put fat, I guess. I don't understand, because anything is stored in your body to facilitate different metabolic mechanisms. Glucose is the same exact way. Now, it would make sense that glucose is stored inside your muscle tissue because muscles use that glucose locally to produce energy, to produce contractile force inside your muscles locally, right? Like muscles just don't take up glucose just to regulate blood sugar. That's not why. Muscles produce contractions. Those contractions require glucose. So the framing that the framing is very odd. When I first heard this, I'm like, I don't know why anybody who's a doctor would explain this way. It's a very strange way to frame it, right? It's kind of like the only reason to store money inside your bank account is just to, I don't know what, just to have it in your bank account rather than in your pocket. I mean, it's an odd, it doesn't really, I don't know, the reasoning is a bit strange to me. So I just wanted to point that out, but I'm going to continue here.
So the reason why you have metabolic inflexibility is because you're eating a high carbohydrate diet and your muscles are full of carbohydrate. And so therefore they're always burning carbohydrate. However, if you stop eating carbohydrates for a few days, within days, your ability to burn fat shoots up. And Louise Burke, who we have lots of disagreements.
So now here's the thing that's odd, right? Your body's always burning through carbs or whatever, right? Your muscles are always burning through carbs, glucose for energy, which is true because your body is always metabolically active to one degree or another. This is true. So essentially, you eat carbohydrates. Those carbohydrates get broken down in that digestive system, converted into glucose. That glucose gets taken up into your lean muscle tissue. I keep saying lean muscle, your muscle tissue, liver, all of the cells of your body. That glucose then powers all of the cells of your body because glucose is the primary source of energy for the human body. So then he says, now after several days, your body, after several days of not eating, carbohydrates, your ability to burn fat skyrockets. Yes, because Fat is your body's auxiliary form of energy. It's the form of energy your body uses when you don't have access to food, which is predominantly carbohydrates. But now, if fat burning or fat adaptation, which is what he's talking about, is that if that is the human body's natural state, then why is he describing it in a secondary way? Also, to say that, when human beings, I guess, were in their beginning evolutionary period, human beings didn't have access to carbs or didn't have access to carbohydrate-rich foods. Since when? Most edible foods are carbohydrate-rich. So this is a very odd claim to make. Is he talking about, I guess, people from Alaska or just places where the climate or the environment don't facilitate like vegetation? What is he talking about? So that claim, and he made this claim earlier, which is kind of odd, like, human beings had this very fatty diet and then carbohydrates came later and human beings had to adapt to eating carbohydrates. I mean, if you know anything about the environment of planet Earth, right, you would know better than that. And if you know, like if you made a list, okay, here's a list of all of the whole food, human foods, edible foods. All of them overwhelmingly would be carbohydrates, right? I mean, if you think about it, like animal products, there's like a handful, maybe, not a whole lot. But as far as human beings are concerned, there's a reason why human beings developed agriculture in the first place. Now, if human beings were meant to primarily have a fatty diet, then what was the point of developing this elaborate agricultural system in the first place where you're growing crops? Why did human beings even think to do that in the first place if you were just getting by on really fatty animal-rich diets? It doesn't make sense because the thing is, human invention is born out of necessity. So if carbs weren't even necessary and you were all doing fine with the fatty foods, what was the point of the agriculture? What was the point of the vertical agriculture, growing fruits, growing berries on vines, growing tubers like potatoes, yams, carrots, all types of edible vegetables, corn, rice, soybeans, really any type of beans, legumes, these types of things, all these carbohydrate-rich foods. Why even invent all of that if human beings ain't even supposed to be eating carbs in the first place? It doesn't make sense, right? So the logic just doesn't stick. It doesn't make sense, right? So essentially he's saying that he's stating an obvious thing. Yeah, if you go a long period of time without having access to food or carbohydrates, or if the only thing you're eating is dietary fat, well, yeah, your body is going to adapt to using fat for fuel because, well, your body's primary source of energy, which is glucose, is not present. Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of like, yeah, if you take a rich person that has an abundance of money and then you cut their money supply and you impoverish them, well, they're going to adapt to living a lifestyle of poverty. Right? Like human beings are just going to naturally adapt to whatever you have access to. You're going to adapt. Human beings are largely adaptive. It's kind of like saying being frail and weak is the human body's natural state. And then people start doing all this stuff. They started lifting weights and engaging in resistance training. And now you just have muscle growing. But the only reason why muscle is growing is just to make sure that your tendons and ligaments and bones don't snap. Sure, I guess. You can explain it that way if you want, and technically you would be correct. But nobody explains muscle gain that way. Nobody says the human body's natural state is to be weak and barely have any muscle. Right? Being carb adaptive and fat adaptive both are natural states. It's not like one or the other is a natural state. They're both natural states because the human body naturally possesses these abilities. right? So the word natural is used in this very odd kind of way here.
With Louise, but she's done some fabulous work in really well-trained athletes. And she found within 5 days, converting to a high-fat diet, you can burn huge amounts of fat, 1.6, 1.7 grams per minute. Value.
Well, now the thing too is that, well, yeah, obviously, right? So if my diet is entirely made up of fat, well, my only source of energy is going to be fat. So naturally, I'm going to burn more of it because I'm not sharing the caloric burn rate between the glucose from the carbohydrates and the dietary fat. I mean, it's zero sum. What he's explaining is zero sum. So if your diet is predominantly carbohydrate based, well, your body adapts to getting really good at prioritizing and burning carbohydrates and glucose for energy. If you have a really fatty diet with minimal to no carbohydrates, well, then your body has to then get really good at burning fat for energy. So it's going to accelerate the amount of fat you burn for energy. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. So if I burn, let's say I burn on average 2,500 calories a day, right? Regardless of what I'm burning, well, I'm burning something, right? Whether it be carbohydrates or fat. But now if my diet is mostly fat, well, out of that 2,500 calories, guess what I'm going to be mostly burning, right? So this is essentially what he's explaining. This isn't like a revolutionary idea. It's just, quite frankly, it's actually very obvious, right?
Is that were never seen before the fat adaptation diet came along. So that's my view, is that fat adaptation is not fat adaptation, it's carbohydrate adaptation. That's the key. Fat adaptation is the normal pattern. Carbohydrate adaptation.
Well, normal as opposed to what?
Is there to try to get rid of the carbohydrate, keep your insulin low, and protect your health for the long term.
That's a.
All right. So this is kind of like what I mean about media literacy, right? This is essentially, mental gymnastics, right? Because the thing is, your body prioritizing carbohydrates for energy when there is an abundance of carbohydrates. Well, that is the body's natural human state. That's what your body naturally has the ability to do. If your diet is mostly fats, well, then your body naturally will burn more fat and prioritize that for energy. It's what the human body normally does. Now, when I often speak about the metabolism, the human metabolism, right? And I talk about carbohydrates as a primary source of energy. And the reason why carbohydrates would be a primary source of energy is because it is the primary source of energy in the human diet. And the reason for that is because the human diet, or the most edible foods, are carbohydrate based. It's just a fact. If you made a list of foods that were edible for human beings, the overwhelming majority of them would be carbohydrates. That's just a fact, right? So essentially, carbohydrates primary source, and then fat is an auxiliary source, right? So your body is also really good at storing fat. When you get really, really good at storing fat, this is called obesity, essentially, right? Now, the interesting thing, too, is the way that your body stores glucose from carbs is fundamentally different from the way that your body stores fat from fat. Now, when you eat a ton of carbohydrates, your body stores carbohydrates primarily inside your muscle mass. Right? So you'll be storing a minimum of 15 grams of glucose in each kilogram of muscle mass. Right? So you eat enough carbs, it literally makes your muscles look fuller. It actually increases the size of your muscle mass just from eating carbohydrates in and of itself. Right? Now, you'll have people where they increase their carbohydrate intake and gain like 3 pounds in one day, and they freak out. Oh, shoot, I just gained like 3 pounds. Or, oh, shoot, I just gained like 5 pounds from eating all of these carbs. I want to lose weight, not gain weight. And it's like, well, yeah, take your circumference measurements. Right? Where have you gained the inches? So, like for example, fellas, you increase your carbohydrate intake and then your shoulders are wider, and then across your chest and your back is wider and thicker, but then the waist measurement is either smaller or the same. Now, the thing with fat is your body doesn't really store fat inside muscle tissue. It's actually very problematic if you store fat inside muscle tissue, because that is ectopic fat, literally, which is the precursor for diabetes. Okay, if you store any significant degree of fat inside your muscle tissue, which is anything over 1%, congratulations, you're diabetic. So your body stores fat on top of your organs and stores fat right underneath your skin, right? This is visceral fat, and then right underneath your skin is subcutaneous fat. Now, we don't want to do a whole lot of fat storage. So you have two options. You can either have a minimal amount of fat intake inside your diet to minimize the amount of visceral fat buildup you get around your organs and underneath your skin and inside your liver, or you can really cut your carbohydrates and just have your diet primarily come from fats. Both work as far as weight management, but remember what I said about trades and micronutrients. That's where we start. That's where the deal maker changes, right? So with carbohydrates and fats, they do very fundamentally different things, right? Your fat sources and your carbohydrate sources, very fundamentally different things. Now, as far as your vitamins and minerals, let's say vitamins, you have water-soluble vitamins and then you have fat-soluble vitamins. Now, your water-soluble vitamins are going to come in much greater quantities than the fat-soluble ones. And the reason for that is because the fat-soluble ones, those actually get metabolized and they stay inside your system for a much longer period of time. The water-soluble ones, they're kind of in and out. They do their job and they're out. And so you keep replenishing them primarily through your carbohydrate-rich sources, right? There ain't a whole lot of fatty foods that are really high in vitamin C, right? So, when it comes to your B vitamins and your vitamin C, that's primarily going to come from carbohydrate-rich sources. But when it comes to vitamin A, E, and K, vitamin D too, but let's just say vitamin A, E, and K, I'm going to explain the difference. That's primarily going to come from your fatty foods, but you don't really need a whole lot of it because it accumulates in your body over time, right? And you don't use it up as quickly. Vitamin D is more of a hormone that's synthesized from sun exposure. When I mentioned earlier about melanin, melanated people require more sun exposure because melanin makes you UV resistant. This is why, like, if you're brown, you don't burn up in the sun that quick. Whereas if you don't really have much melanin, well, you get lobsterized, right? You get burnt up, right? The sun will chew you out. So, if you don't really have much melanin, that UV, you get much more of a conversion of vitamin D. But if you're a brown skinned person, it's because your brown skin is more adapted to having more sun exposure and living closer to the equator. I don't know the inner workings of the science as far as how much melanin affects your diet. But the interesting thing is, in my personal experience, the people who tend to have the biggest benefits from a fruit-dominant diet, for some reason, are melanated people, right? My melanated folks do very, very well on a fruit-dominant diet. Fruit-dominant diet and optimal sun exposure. All right. For whatever reason. Now, my results can be kind of skewed because most of my tribe members are melanated folks, right? So my European friends and folks tuning in, y'all got to even out the group, right? Y'all got to even out the group and get on these fruit bowls, right? So we can see what's really going on with this, right? But in any case, carbohydrate, emphasis on the suffix hydrate. The reason why your muscle mass will literally expand in size from having more carbohydrates in your diet is because more water makes it into the muscle tissue, which expands and volumizes the muscle tissue and creates more of an anabolic environment inside the muscle tissue. This facilitates training performance as well as muscular growth. Right? Carbohydrates are like your diet's primary mechanism for keeping the human body hydrated. The food category in particular that does the best job with this are fruits. This is one of the reasons why a fruit dominant diet is like at the top of the list, because it's one of the most effective ways to guarantee that your body is adequately hydrated. Your brain needs a ton of water. Your lungs need a ton of water. Your muscle tissue needs a ton of water. Your bloodstream, all of your vital organs need a ton of water, right? The only thing in the human body that really doesn't need a ton of water are your bones, right? Your bones don't really store much water. Your bones store water though, just not a whole lot, right? It's mostly stored inside your bone marrow. But muscle contractions, muscular performance, brain chemistry. I mean, if you're dehydrated, this can crush your libido, right? Fellas, this can reduce your testosterone. This can raise your cortisol levels. Ladies, this becomes problematic because having that really perpetually elevated cortisol from chronic dehydration can cause vascular constriction, which stresses your body out even more. And in order to regulate that elevated cortisol and keep your adrenal glands from crashing on you, your body then compensates by increasing estrogen in order to regulate those cortisol levels. But now, of course, with the extremely perpetually elevated estrogen, this can drive you into menopause much quicker. This can cause you to develop issues like endometriosis, Hashimoto's, excessive weight gain, in particular in the arms, breast, hips, thighs, all that kind of stuff. Okay? So you can develop massive hormonal problems just from being chronically dehydrated. Now, the reason why this matters is because fatty foods, well, these are dehydrating foods. This is the reason why when people cut all their carbohydrates and they go on a keto or a carnivore diet, they lose weight really quickly. I've had people tell me crazy, I dropped like 15 pounds in a week. It's like, yeah, you dropped a lot of water weight by cutting on your carbohydrates. You dehydrated your body, essentially. This is like what bodybuilders do when they cut their carbohydrates and start taking in caffeine in order to get that dry, thin-skinned, vascular look right before they step on stage. And they feel miserable when they do this, by the way. You'll have like pro bodybuilders and they'll dehydrate themselves, they'll caffeinate, they'll cut all their carbs, and their energy levels will crash through the roof and they'll feel miserable. They'll look incredible. All vascular, striated, and veiny, and oily, and tan from the bronzer, but feel miserable. And then right after the show, they eat carbohydrates again, and all of a sudden they fill up and they look like a normal human being again. Right? You know, it's like when you dry out a sponge all the way. That's pretty much how they look. And then, you know, after the show and they start eating again and getting the carbohydrates, then it go into looking like a moist sponge, right? Voluminous, like how a sponge is supposed to, right? So, but you don't want to just lose weight via dehydration because that's not a good trade. That's a great way to jack up your blood pressure. That's a way to jack up insulin resistance to cause pathological weight gain. This is a great way to destroy your hormones, right? To the point where it can take you multiple years to recover from this, right? Some people, they've dehydrated themselves and cut their carbohydrates for so much of a prolonged period of time that they spend years recovering from the damage that they did to their kidneys, to their liver, to their vascular system, to their brain chemistry, to their ovaries, their testes, etc. Dehydration for human beings is deeply problematic, and 3/4 of your body is water. And it's like that for a reason. So you don't really want to play around with that, right? So let's get into this here, right? Because, you know, we're talking about this whole keto carnivore thing and some things that I've noticed with folks. And I have, you know, your average everyday people who've reached out to me. Hey, you know, I don't know what to do with my diet. I did the keto thing. I lost a lot of weight with it, but it just wasn't, I felt miserable. My blood pressure went up super high. My cholesterol got jacked. The cholesterol numbers that people have gotten from doing this is wild. And their doctor was like, their doctor will literally go and lock the door and be like, you can't leave until you walk out of here with these cholesterol meds because you got to get this cholesterol down. This is a problem, right? Having cholesterol at 250, 270, 300 plus is problematic. Deeply problematic, to say the least. And when you pair that with high blood pressure and excessive levels of iron buildup in your liver, right? Deeply problematic. When you got that excessive levels of creatinine, your bun levels are excessively high on your kidneys, right, on them tests, deeply problematic, okay? Because dehydration is very, very bad, especially on your kidneys. So the excess levels of cysteine, methionine, branched chain amino acids, proteins in general, because protein is very acidic, which means that your kidneys have to work extra hard in order to keep your pH balanced to a level where it's supposed to be at. I've also had people come to me and they say, you know, I did a carnivore diet thing, but I started smelling bad. I started to have really bad smells, like body odor. I was like, well, yeah, because when you cut all your carbohydrates out of your diet, you're also cutting out the prebiotic fibers, and you're cutting out all the chlorophyll and the magnesium and the vitamin C and the water that's supposed to manage any bacterial or fungal buildup that happens in your body, right? So, you know, having this severe lack of vitamin C, potassium, magnesium, manganese, folate, water, prebiotic fiber, all this, you destroy your gut and you can develop halitosis, where you get this overgrowth of bacteria all up in your mouth and in your stomach and whatnot, and it make you smell bad. Your armpits smell bad, your crotch smell bad, your breath, all this type of stuff smells bad. Right? So these are things that people that people have come to me with. In addition to that, it's not just your regular everyday people, but it was also a very big advocate of a carnivore diet who I've done like a little review on some things that he said before. But this guy, Paul Saladino, I want to pull this up because one thing that I just realized recently, and I stumbled across this video, is he had a chat with somebody as to why he quit the carnivore diet. And he started eating a ton of carbohydrates. So we got to talk about that. Hold on.
But I think the biggest thing for me that I've changed my mind on since I wrote the book in 2019 was carbohydrates. And then in connecting with that, the ketosis and ketogenic diets. So when I wrote the Carnivore Code, and this is humbling, this is what we all do, is we write books and then you put your thoughts into cement, you freeze your thoughts in kryptonite, and then you change your thoughts and you think, oh, the book, it's just not a living document. So, but when I wrote the book, I was of the opinion that carbohydrates were not great for humans and was sort of looking at the literature differently. And over time, I learned personally in my own life, doing a carnivore diet of meat, organs, and fat and salt for a year and a half, that including carbohydrates in my diet improved my health from there. So my whole story is that I was eating kind of a paleo diet, had really bad eczema, which I'd had my whole life. Getting rid of vegetables and all plant food significantly improved the eczema, so much so that in the last 4.5, 5 years since I've been on this more specific path, I haven't had any flares of the eczema that are significant at all. That was a big deal because I had massive eczema on my elbows, my wrists, my hips, so much so that I really couldn't even wear pants easily. It would get on my shirts. I couldn't do jujitsu because I had eczema on my knees and it was getting infected. So getting rid of vegetables really helped with my eczema. But then I learned.
Now, what I would really be interested to know is if he did a food allergy test. Because when people come to me with issues, when they're talking about eczema, things like that, I'm like, have you done a food allergy test? Because issues like that are usually caused by food allergies. Right? From what he's saying right now, he hasn't taken a food allergy test, right? Because it's not like, oh, well, just all plants cause eczema. That's not how that works. You have a food allergy to specific things, and you utilized a carnivore diet as an elimination diet, right? So, I mean, if you just remove like everything and you gradually start adding back in things, that's how you can tell. That's one of the ways you can tell what's actually causing you problems, right? It's doing an elimination diet. Essentially, you just use a carnivore diet as an elimination diet. Before doing that, though, what he probably could have done is just do a food allergy test.
Learned after a year and a half that I was getting such bad muscle cramps, heart palpitations, sleep disturbances. My testosterone was kind of going down. Right now it's around 700 or 800. I've included carbohydrates in my diet for the last 2.5 years. But at that point it was going 450, 500, it was significantly lower. And my sex hormone binding globulin was creeping up. So I had electrolyte issues. And what I realized was that I'd been...
So basically he's confirming everything I just told you so far on the stream, right? Crashing of your libido, electrolyte issues, really bad muscle cramps, sleep disturbances, heart palpitations from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, quite possibly maybe some atherosclerotic plaque buildup or just major vascular constriction causing the palpitations. Extremely high cortisol, which also can contribute to the palpitations, to that. So basically, he really wrecked himself hormonally, and so he's still trying to recover from the damage that he did. And this typically took him 1.5 years. Now, the interesting thing is metabolic issues typically take around 5 years to develop on average. They don't just pop up out of nowhere. But if you do a diet that's very extreme and you sustain it over a prolonged period of time, well, then, yeah, you can pretty much kind of speed up the damage, right? And really wreck yourself hormonally.
Thinking about insulin wrong. I'd been thinking that I needed to keep my insulin low all of the time. And to be fair, on a carnivore diet, my fasting insulin was low, 3.5, 3.0. And I thought incorrectly that if I ate carbohydrates, my insulin would spike and that would be a bad. Realized, and I wasn't taught this in medical school, was that insulin spikes after you eat carbohydrates are actually healthy for the human body for a variety of reasons.
Now, the reason why he wasn't taught this in medical school is because he doesn't have an education in nutrition. That's not what he studied in school, which is why he didn't learn that. He's a psychiatrist, right? No, I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying this is why he didn't learn that, right? Most people actually don't know that. They think, insulin spikes are bad. And insulin is essentially an anabolic hormone, right? Insulin is a very important hormone, so much so that literally not having a pancreas that sufficiently secretes insulin causes something very problematic and life-threatening called type 1 diabetes, right? Essentially a disease where your body doesn't produce a sufficient amount of insulin or any insulin at all. Right. So, you hear people talk about, oh, insulin is a fat storage hormone. Insulin is not a fat storage hormone. And anybody who says that it's a fat storage hormone doesn't know what insulin actually does, because insulin is not responsible for storing fat. It's responsible for shuttering glucose inside cells. This is why when you eat fat, it doesn't spike your insulin, because fat doesn't act on insulin. All right. So I've heard a lot of people on the internet calling insulin a fat storage hormone. It drove me nuts, because these are people who identify as doctors who say stuff like that. And for the life of me, I'm like, I don't know how you can say as a doctor that insulin is a fat storage hormone. That's insane to me. Hold on 1 second. Oh, you said it happened at about 18 months for you. Look at that. There you go. Well, I had really bad psoriasis. I was a huge meat eater. And when I started reducing meat and increasing fruit and veggies and smoothies, my psoriasis would literally go away. There you go. Look at that. Folks is just dropping testimonies in the comments here. All right.
So insulin is probably something else I've changed my mind on, carbohydrates and insulin. What I realize now is that your body needs an insulin signal after a meal when you eat carbohydrates to signal to the kidneys to resorb and hold on to minerals, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium.
There we go. So now if he would have booked a call with me, I could have told him this. So yeah, essentially when you cut all your carbohydrates and whatnot, especially when you do a carnivore diet, a lot of people on a carnivore diet, they develop deficiencies of magnesium, manganese, potassium, not really so much calcium. Some do with the calcium, but that's a gut health issue, so it's not always, and folate. So actually vitamin C, potassium, folate, magnesium, and manganese are like the top 5 things that I've noticed they develop deficiencies in when doing this carnivore diet thing. And that's what causes a lot of like the sleep quality issues, like with the sleep deprivation, the heart palpitations, the high blood pressure, the chronically elevated cholesterol, the collapse in libido, testosterone, kidney health issues, all kinds of issues, right? They get messed up metabolically and hormonally big time. So yeah, sure, on the bright side, like you got a healthy fasted blood sugar level, but I mean, at what cost? Yeah, you've lost weight, but what have you sacrificed in the process, right? It doesn't really seem to be a good trade. So as far as those electrolytes, that's needed in order to sustain healthy blood and like cellular oxygenation. Right. So what he's talking about here, the importance of insulin and related to your kidney health and your electrolytes. You have a lot of these carnivore influencers now where, you know, they're peddling electrolyte supplements on their channel, right? They got brand sponsorships for electrolyte powders and whatnot. Right. So because they know that, well, it's inherently pathological, because you can't have people following you and you're telling them, you know, don't eat fruit, no vegetables, no carbs, no nothing, and they messing their health up. Right. So they got to put that little disclaimer in the descriptions of their videos talking about, oh, don't listen to me, don't take medical advice from me, blah, 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 that whole thing. I'm not responsible for your health, etc.
So the massive, profound electrolyte problems that people get on long-term ketogenic diets are almost certainly due to a lack of insulin signaling at the level of the kidney. There are various levels of kidney physiology upon which insulin is going to act, but people in the ketogenic space, I think, are well-intentioned and they're trying to hold on to minerals by including massive amounts of salt in their diet, but it just doesn't work, because you need an insulin signal at the level of the kidney to hold on to those things. So the first thing I did when I sort of transitioned off a ketogenic, zero carb, quote unquote, carnivore diet was include honey in my diet. And the first couple of days I felt a little weird because I was physiologically insulin resistant. And then your body kind of adjusts to this, my blood sugar spikes normalize. And you know, if I eat honey today or a few years ago after I had adjusted to having the carbohydrates back in my diet, my blood sugar.
Now, if he was diabetic and he did this, it would have been way worse for him. So when he did this whole carnivore diet thing, he wasn't already insulin resistant to the point where he was like pre-diabetic or anything like that when he did it. But if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic and you do that, once you start adding all the carbohydrates back in and you're still eating all of this meat, it could be even worse. Right? So you got to be really careful about how much of the carbohydrates you reintroduce back into your diet and really manage how much you eat in general as a result, because you can shock the crap out of your body.
Might go 130, 140, 150 milligrams per deciliter, but I don't worry about that, because if you look at the actual shape of that curve, it comes back down to a baseline very quickly, within the hour for sure. So this is normal human physiology, and we should not fear glucose spikes in a metabolically healthy individual. It's going to go up, it's going to come back down. That's normal, and that insulin signaling is healthy for humans at so many levels. It's healthy for our hormones, it's healthy for our brains, it's healthy for the production of glutathione and the resorption of minerals. So that idea of insulin being all...
So glutathione is your body's natural antioxidant that it produces on its own. Now, this is like your body's internal hedge, and it really uses and leverages this in a long-term fasted state in order to reduce oxidative stress and catabolism of lean mass, right? But it's not free. Like anything, you tap it too much, it develops a pathology.
Bad all the time, and including carbohydrates in my diet, that was a huge thing. And now we know, I mean, there's tons of research that I just didn't see at that point, that I was sort of blind to, about carbohydrates for athletes, carbohydrates post-exercise. I mean, we just worked out. I have holes in my shorts now from the weight belt, and this, this weight that I was using has ripped a hole in the front of my shorts here. And carbohydrates post-exercise are so clearly shown to improve performance. Carbohydrates overall are shown to improve all sorts of metrics in humans: testosterone, recovery, sleep, all kinds of things. So those are two big ones for me from the outset.
Now, on the cramping side, I've got a question.
Yeah, so I don't know if y'all want me to play the rest of the video, I could. But essentially, now this is a guy who, when I first found him, right, he was talking about carbohydrates like it's the worst thing on the planet, right? And even a lot of the people in the space that he's in, with the carnivore people, they talk about carbohydrates and plants. They're trying to kill you. They've got anti-nutrients. They make you fat. They talk all this kind of stuff. So now and big shout out to Paul Saladino for being honest about this, right? Because he came out and he was honest. Hey, y'all, I got to admit to y'all, I got to be honest. I've been eating like 300 grams of carbs a day. I've been crushing it with the fruit. Right? Don't worry, guys. I still eat all of that organ meat and whatnot, and I still eat a lot of meat in my diet, but I'm crushing the fruit, right? And I feel amazing doing it. And I'm kind of just like, well, I could have told you that, right? So, it's interesting, and people are starting to come around now. The influencers, social media influencers, they're not really so much doing what he did. Big shout out to him, because he had to change his whole brand, right? Because when you're really dogmatic about your approach to nutrition, this is why I tell people I'm not dogmatic in the things that I say, right? So even for me, where I advocate for a fruit dominant diet, but I've also made videos and have talked about, hey, look, in the winter and fall seasons, the fruits that I advocate for the most to be in your diet, they're not going to be in season. So here's some alternatives for the winter, for the fall months. Here's an alternative dietary strategy, right? I'm not dogmatically about fruits where it's like, oh, you can't eat anything unless it's a fruit, right? Because I'm practical about what I'm talking about. This isn't some brand gimmick or anything like that. It's like, well, what produces the best results and outcomes? And, it may not be as sexy, it may not get all the clicks, but it's important to talk about and to be honest about that, right? So, big shout out to him for talking about that. Let's see what else he wants to talk about. Because this guy, Thomas DeLauer, and he's a big keto and kind of carnivore adjacent guy, right? So he's all about, but he had to start adding the carbs back in his diet and all that kind of stuff, because he used to be big on keto and he had to drop all that kind of stuff too, because he was getting health issues as a result.
Question. As far as, because I've experienced that when I'm low carb, right? I'm very, very prone to cramping, which as someone that does a lot of endurance stuff, it's problematic. Like if I'm backcountry or anything like that. I was just doing a long trek and ran into a huge cramping issue, even though I'm not super low carb anymore. I guess I'd still lowish carb. And I would argue that it actually takes time to actually recover from some of that insulin issue that you have with the kidneys. But the question that I've always had, and maybe you know the answer, since protein is insulinogenic, can you get some resorption of the minerals through the insulin spike with protein, or does the glucagon cancel that out in that case?
I mean, you get some, it's just nowhere near. If you look at the amount of insulin and the level of insulin you get with carbohydrates, it's much higher than it is with just protein. I mean, you get some with protein, it's just not the same as a carbohydrate spike. And so people in communities that are fearful of carbohydrates will say, look at how much insulin you're getting. And that's good, you need that. And so people understand this also, like when you don't eat carbohydrates, you become insulin resistant. This is not the pathological insulin resistance of diabetes, which is different physiology that I can describe. This is the insulin resistance of physiology, basically historically, evolutionarily, this is starvation insulin resistance, meaning that you are physiologically insulin resistant. Your body is saying, hey, spare the glucose any glucose you're getting, spare that for the brain, the adrenals, and the gonads, and maybe the red blood cells. Don't put it in the muscles. That's physiologic insulin resistance, and that's what you see in people who are low.
So, and it's important that he says that, because when I talk about a diet that is at least 50% carbohydrates, but more along the lines of 60 to 65% carbohydrates, is because those are the optimal levels where you maintain insulin sensitivity without completely shutting off any degree of fat adaptation, right? So with those kind of macros in particular, you can guarantee that you're getting the carbohydrates to be optimal, right? While not developing any kind of hormonal issues. And this is, for me, in my diet, what I mean, I've been whole food, plant-based with a really carbohydrate dominant diet for a decade now, right? Where my carbohydrate intake is not below 50%, right? But it's more so, it's at a minimum of 50%, typically around 65%, somewhere around there, maybe 60, but pretty much is going to be overwhelmingly a carbohydrate dominant diet for those reasons. And it's not just because the carbohydrates or the insulin, it's a part of it, but that's not all of it, right? You know, again, having the folate, having the magnesium, the manganese, the water, the vitamin C, the potassium, right? All of the antioxidants and whatnot that literally protect your cells from oxidative stress. I mean, antioxidants literally reduces the total amount of stress on your body. This is important for your joint health, your brain chemistry, your sex drive, your sleep quality, muscle growth, all of this type of stuff. Literally, you can increase muscle growth and retention just by eating enough carbohydrates. Because when you store an adequate amount of glucose inside your cells of your muscle tissue, this has anabolic signaling. So remember, insulin is like a type of growth hormone. And so it creates an anabolic environment, anabolic meaning conducive to growth. It creates an anabolic environment inside muscle. So then you get higher rates of muscle protein synthesis. So your muscle is going to be more inclined to grow. Your brain is going to be more inclined to growing muscle tissue when there's an adequate amount of glucose stored inside the muscle tissue locally, and when there's an adequate amount of hydration inside the muscle tissue, or just the body in general. So you got good blood pressure, good blood flow. Your muscles are well hydrated. This is one of the biggest benefits of supplementing with creatine. When you supplement with creatine, it contributes to the hydration of muscle tissue and ATP production, right? So creatine is actually a very good supplement to put into your diet on a daily basis, not only just to improve muscle growth and training performance, but also to improve insulin sensitivity and mitochondrial function. Mitochondria is essentially the energy producing factories inside your cells, and being dehydrated and having limited amounts of glucose stored inside the muscle tissue can cause big problems for your metabolism, right? It's a mitochondrial disruptor, and diet is a zero-sum game. So, the more carbohydrates you consume, the less dietary fats in proportion you consume. And if you reduce carbohydrates, well, you necessarily need to increase the fats if you're going to maintain a certain caloric balance in your diet. And if you're going to consume a high amount of fat, the more fat you consume, the more saturated fat you consume, right? And saturated fat is the primary driver of insulin resistance and mitochondrial dysfunction, which means that your cells do a poorer job at using glucose to generate ATP to produce cellular energy. All right, so that's essentially how all of that works. There ain't really a whole lot of a benefit to cutting your carbohydrates, right? It's kind of like trying to save your way out of poverty. It doesn't really work that way. If you want to get out of poverty, you need leverage and investment. You need yield and you need dividends. That's how you get out of poverty. And in the human body, it works the same exact way. Use your food as leverage to improve the infrastructure of your body. And that's how you get better results. You can't save and cut your way out. It doesn't work that way.
Carb or zero carb or keto. And that's why the first time someone like that eats carbohydrates, they may feel very strange or the blood sugar may go up. This is why a woman who is low carb will fail a glucola test in her pregnancy, because that is physiologic insulin resistance. And I actually have come to believe that's not a good thing. I don't think we want to be physiologically insulin resistant. It is a historically, evolutionarily adaptive thing for extreme situations, but I think that humans do better. And I've come to see carbohydrates as a signal of abundance. I mean,
So what he's saying now is he's saying the opposite of, what's this guy, Dr. Tim Noakes? He's saying the opposite, right? He's saying that, fat adaptation is a survival mechanism as a result of being in, situations of starvation. And he had to change his tune because that wasn't his tune before, but he had to rethink that. And now he's closer to where I am, right? So, I mean, you have the dogmatism. It starts to die off when your health is threatened, right? And then you get to a point where you're like, look, I had this no carb, vegetables are trying to kill you thing going on, but I need to rethink the way that I'm doing things because I'm having some problems here. So that's essentially, the point that I want to make there. So is carbohydrates essential to the human diet? Do you need carbs? Well, technically, you don't need carbs. You don't need them, right? In the same way where you don't need to make $200,000 a year. You could do fine at $70,000 a year. You could do fine at $80,000. But if you had the choice between making $80,000 a year and $200,000 a year, which one would you choose? I don't want to just be at the margins and just, I'm not going to do any more than I need. I want to do whatever is going to be the most beneficial for my health metrics straight across the board. I want to make the best trade possible. So whereas something may not be essential, but is it beneficial? And if it's beneficial, if I'm supposed to avoid it simply because it's not essential, well, is that a good trade? Right? So moral of the story, even if you're one of these carnivore people, eat your fruit. All right. Let me catch up with y'all in these comments here. What is this about an error? Am I still live? Did the stream end? What's going on with my feed here? What is this saying over here in the YouTube feed? An error occurred. Please try again later. Playback. I don't know what that is. We still here? Okay. Yeah, on my end, it looks a little bit different. Folks, hit the like button if you like the stream. I forgot to say that earlier, right? Hit that like button. You know what I'm saying? If y'all finding this information valuable, hit that like button, right? Get this thing churning through the algorithm here. Let's see. Speak for yourself. I need to make 200K. True. If somebody was to say to you, well, you don't need to make $200,000 a year. I'm like, I don't care. If I have the option to make $200,000 a year, I'm gonna make $200,000 a year. Well, it's not, you don't need to. It's not essential. I'm like, I don't care. I'm trying to make more money. That is gonna give me more leverage. What you mean? What is this? Merciless also changed his mind? Yeah, you had folks starting to fall off. I love it because this happened with the keto diet thing. Everybody was rah keto diet. You scrawny vegans, this and that. You can't build muscle on a vegan diet, and you don't get no protein on a vegan diet. And there's all of these like media gimmicks, right, that people have. Oh, well, you know, you can't get complete proteins on a vegan diet. You don't get enough protein. You can't get complete proteins. You don't get good quality proteins. It's all of these weird, gimmicky kind of media gimmicks, right? Gimmicky media gimmicks. That sentence sounds ridiculous. But yeah, so it's like these kind of things. I feel like people just go on the internet and they want something like some kind of slogan or a catchphrase, and they all like repeat it straight across the board. It's like they're all getting the same email with the same talking points in it, right? So with the keto people, and you know, when they would talk about a vegan diet, it was, oh, you can't get complete proteins. You're not going to be able to build muscle. You're going to be scrawny and fat, right? That whole kind of thing. And then the keto people is like, you got to cut your carbohydrates. You don't need to consume carbohydrates. All you need is butter, bacon, and eggs, and you know, eating steak and burgers. And when you eat a cheeseburger, just take the bun off, right? And all of this kind of stuff. And then people started bombing out on a keto diet, right? You saw people adding more avocado, more nuts and seeds, more leafy greens to their diet. Then they started adding berries. They started eating blueberries and strawberries. And so they started buckling a little bit. They started adding more and more. They started adding the fruits and the vegetables and the cucumber and all of that, right? Because they was having problems. And then eventually they fell off, and now you have this new, and the keto thing, it was all about fructose. So they all started pumping out fructose videos to try to scare people away from eating fruit, right? Because it started with the protein myths, then they moved on to the fruit, and they would use the words fruit and fructose interchangeably. And they talk about, oh, insulin resistance is diabetes is caused by fructose, and this is why you got to minimize the amount of fruit you eat. And so they started doing the bait and switch with the word fruit and fructose, and fear mongering about eating grapes or whatever. And then that kind of started to fade a little bit. And now the new thing is the more extreme version of keto. It's carnivore. Now it's like, well, I was doing a keto diet and I was having all of these massive health problems, but my whole world changed when I started cutting out all the vegetables. So I wasn't eating spinach. I wasn't eating kale. I cut out all the broccoli. I cut out the berries. I cut out everything. And now all I'm doing, I'm eating pig testicles and liver and all this type of stuff. I'm like, ew, you're eating testicles. No grown man should be eating testicles. All right. You know, come on. That's a little bit beyond me. And they had all these stories. Oh, you know, my joints feel better. And, you know, and then they had the thing about lectins, and, you know, the problem with a vegan diet is the lectins and the anti-nutrients and the phytic acid and all this kind of stuff, right? And they would throw out these words, these scientific claims, like, ooh, these scary lectins. What's that about? Oh, you know, beans are dangerous because of the lectins, right? Oh, this scary boogeyman lectins. And then vegans came out and was like, well, yeah, sure, this is why we don't eat raw beans. Right? You soak them and you cook them, and then that destroys the lectins. And people are like, oh, okay, so lectins are fine. Or the beans are fine, and the lectins is not a real problem. And then it was, oh, the phytates, the phytic acids, right? That's a problem, and it robs your body of nutrients. And it's like, well, it's the same thing with the lectins, right? When you soak it and when you mill it and you cook it or whatever the case is, and that breaks down the phytic acid, the phytates. Oh, okay, fine. So it's the same thing as the they're just fear-mongering about that. Then it became, what was the other thing they came up with? It was, what is that called? It was another thing, some other anti-nutrient they were talking about. They call everything anti-nutrients. It was, help me out here, folks. What is the one they would talk about with the vegetables? They come up with so many of these things. Oh, you said Dr. Mercola? Oh, Dr. Mercola, he quit. Yeah, I saw that video earlier today, too. It was something about something builds up in your joints. What's it called? There's this plant, this vegetable thing. I'm forgetting the name of it. It'll come to me at some point in time. but it was saying something like oxalates. There we go. Yeah. So, the oxalates in vegetables. And so they tear up your joints and they accumulate inside the tissues of your organs and these big scary oxalates, right? Now, they would make these claims with no statistical data at all to support any of these claims. So just making up stuff, right? And now rule number 1 is the dosage makes the poison, right? So too much of anything is a problem. Too much of anything, and it doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, too much oxygen is dangerous, right? Too much water is dangerous. It's called drowning, right? Too much heat, dangerous. Too much of anything is problematic. So I did a video a while back. It was a guy, and his name is Dr. Anthony Chafee. And this guy, he was in front of a podium, and his whole thing was plants are trying to kill you. And my man was just dumping claims, saying crazy stuff, right? And, he would say things like, the oxalates, plants produce defense chemicals. Now, that's an interesting thing, right? Defense chemicals. That's like, remember I tell you about the media people, they come up with like these brands, right? Like, if you look at the news, you'll see like across all the news channels, they'll use the same wording. They'll have like the same script. They refer to like the certain things and they'll sloganize it, right? How the news will do that, and it'd be like this kind of weird thing where it'd be like, if you have like, some white kid shoots up a school, it's a lone wolf. If it's a black guy and he robs a store, it's the rampant crime in Chicago. We need to fund more police. They're thugs, right? If it's an Arab person and he blows something up, it's terrorist, right? So they have these special kind of words for things. For the COVID stuff, it was safe and effective, right? That was the thing. It was repeat safe and effective, right? So there's like these little gimmicks for things, right? And so, you have people who like, these media figures or like the carnivore people that do the same thing. And so he was, one of the things that he said that kind of blew me away. Brussels sprouts, they have like 64 carcinogens, and carcinogens cause cancer. So Brussels sprouts are really dangerous for your health. Oh, okay. So you should be able to produce statistical data that shows a direct correlation or causal relationship between the consumption of Brussels sprouts and the rates of cancer. Do you have that data? Right? If the answer is no, you don't have that data, then you probably shouldn't be making that claim, and you probably should first study that issue a lot more until you come up with the statistical data that shows that Brussels sprouts actually have all these carcinogens causing cancer. Right? So no data for that whatsoever. And in fact, there's an inverse correlation between Brussels sprouts or leafy green consumption and cancer. Right? I mean, to the point where, just the increase or having like a vegan diet reduces cancer rates or cancer risk by 19%. But he's not going to show you that data because that cuts against the whole narrative of like plants are trying to kill you. It's a plant defense chemical, peppermint. It's a plant defense chemical, black seed oil, oregano oil, lavender, right? Plant defense chemicals. Now, what's interesting is, those plant defense chemicals, what they've always been historically used for? Medicine, right? So those same plant defense chemicals that kill insects, what they do for us? They kill bacterial infections. They kill fungal infections, right? They inhibit viruses. Right? So they're antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. Yeah, those plant defense chemicals. not only do they defend the plants, they defend us. It seems like an important thing you should inform your audience on. But when, you're doing your whole thing about plants trying to kill us, well, there's certain things you kind of want to leave out. You don't want to tell people the whole truth. So when I see claims like that, I'm like, it's very difficult for me to believe that people who aren't saying, if you're an educated person, doctor, MD, PhD, and all of this, and you're saying stuff like that, it's aggressively negligent. Right? Tannins. Oh, with teas, you got to be careful, when you're drinking teas, because the teas have tannins in them, and, they prevent the absorption of minerals and da. Oh, okay. So we should see a relationship between when people drink herbal or spiced teas, they're developing mineral deficiencies as a result. Do you have that data? Right? We should see that data. Right? And so you always want to look out for the statistical data, because they're not producing that statistical data in these videos and things that they're doing. But what is happening is, it's the same way the keto people started adding berries and vegetables to their diet, is the same way you have carnivore people now, they're adding fruit to their diet. Right? So they say, well, I didn't say fruit was trying to kill you. I said vegetables were trying to kill you. Right? So you leave that open lane to then add in fruit. Right? So, these kinds of things, it's wild for me when I see in the media. So, this is necessary things to talk about here. Because, here on, these media platforms, they select certain things to push out front and center to the masses, right? And it's like a lot of pathological stuff. Like, this media really likes to push problematic things onto us, whether it be like it'll be things that they're either like societally harmful, like let's say, some dude or some woman like a guy on the internet, and he makes a whole bunch of content talking about how, women are children and they need to be controlled, and, feminism, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so you'll have men who will produce whole like media channels complaining about women. Right. It's odd, but it's very popular. So you have people, they'll have like millions of followers on the internet with just channels complaining about women. It's odd to me. It's just, maybe it's not odd, it's just odd to me. Or that you'll have channels where it'll be like women, they'll just have a whole channel complaining about men, right? So it'll just be these two like gender wars, and they'll be battling it out, and they'll have millions and millions of followers, and it'll be this whole thing that's pushed onto you in your algorithm. And I'm like, I don't know, women and men kind of feuding with each other and hating each other's guts. I don't know how productive that is or conducive to society that is. Seems harmful. So when you have people who say, you need a all meat diet. Human beings are not even supposed to be eating vegetables or fruit or anything. It's just supposed to be meat. Seems kind of harmful, right? Seems logistically implausible. Why do I say that? We can't have billions of people on the planet just like eating and eating and eating till there's no more animals left, right? You can't have it. You can't have all your neighbors out in the woods with guns shooting anything that moves, right? Because what you get as a result, you get friendly fire, right? Any living organism with a very high population that exhibits very aggressive consumerist behavior is called a pathogen. That's what that's called. It's called a pandemic. That's how it's referred to, right? When you have a living organism and it's just eating its way through its environment, unchecked, very aggressive behavior, just eating and eating and eating until there's nothing left. It's called a pathogen, right? So if human beings are eating all the herbivores in the environment, to the point where human beings are now competing with actual carnivores. And then human beings, you have billions of them. So you outnumber any carnivore population anywhere, to the point where carnivores, they just starve to death. Because you just have human beings, they're just eating all the herbivores that carnivores are going after. So this is how you get extinctions of carnivore species. And this is also how you get extinctions of those herbivore species, to the point where you don't really have any left. It's like buffalo in the US. It's just none left. And you see mass species extinction even now, right? And human beings have really ramped this up because of this pathological behavior. So human beings want to get slick and be like, let's have factory farming of animals in these wild slaughterhouses, to the point where the people who work in the slaughterhouses, they're all coming down with crazy PTSD and high rates of suicide, which nobody likes to talk about that. So you're having fun eating your carnivore diet, and the person who's over there facilitating your ability to get meat, they're struggling with PTSD, chronic and depression, and high suicide rates. But their well-being don't matter because you want grass-fed beef. You want pig testicles. So their well-being don't matter. Because for you to eat, somebody's got to be out here slaughtering a bunch of screaming animals every day. So this is kind of what I mean about like pathological behaviors, right? So, you know, we got to think about things logistically. And again, this comes down to the trades that we make, right? We got to think about, well, what do we do for our environment? How does our behavior not just affect us personally? Yeah, sure, electrolytes, heart palpitations, poor sleep, low libido, high blood pressure, cholesterol, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, etc. from eating like this. But even if you broaden out, well, how does that affect the industry, your neighbors? How does that affect your environment, the people who actually work to get you the stuff you're eating? What are the downstream effects to that? Shouldn't that be something that we consider? Right? So this is just the way that I think, and this is why we got to have a more sophisticated way of thinking about things. We got to be a bit more sophisticated in our thought process. Right? All right, y'all, talk to me. What we got here in the comments? Yeah, my first video, hold on a second. I got this. YouTube got like this big heart icon in that right-hand corner of the screen. And so it blocks like words that people say. All right, hold on. Yeah, my first live video. I enjoy watching your videos. Well, I appreciate you having you on board. Suki Indigo. I like that name. Is it Suki Indigo or Suki Indigo? How much emphasis should I be putting on them O's? Carnivores need to try and go out and eat an animal raw with their teeth. That's how real carnivores eat meat. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, man, you know, when you got a full-time job, you got kids, you're a tax-paying citizen, you ain't got time to be out here chasing animals and trying to be biting up on no animals and whatnot, running around in the wild, right? We ain't got time for that. That's why I say, you know what? Just grow a fruit tree in your yard. You know what would be really cool? Let's say if we had the suburbs, right? And everybody's got like these big yards or whatever in the suburbs. But everybody grows crops in their yards, right? So everybody's got some kind of fruit tree. You got your neighbors growing watermelons. This one's growing cantaloupes. This one's growing cucumbers. You're growing berries. This one's growing mangoes, whatever the case is, right? So everybody's just growing different types of crops and things like that. In the U.S., we got tons of land. And we got all kind of technology that we can really leverage to grow all types of beautiful, colorful fruits and things like that. And then we got freezers. We can preserve things and all of this kind of stuff. So, you know, we have to, these are the types of conversations we should have. How can we behave in a way that's less pathological to our environment, right? Like we got to be a little bit, if we're going to do all of this consumption that we do, we got to be a little bit smarter and more aware of how we do it. What's this here? Too many nuts and seeds, oils. Beans will be harmful. Too many nuts and... What did I say about seeds, oils? Did I say something about seed oils? beans will be harmful. I mean, I think probably if you eat like, 8 pounds of beans a day, that might be harmful. That might be harmful to your neighbors though, from all the gas you get as a result. That gas, man, let me tell you something. You're crushing it. You're blowing people up out here with the rocket fuel coming out the backside. I grew up in Jamaica and we had like 4 fruit trees, 2 mango trees, a neat tree, cherry, banana, and vegetables. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. My Caribbean folks know the deal. Yes, yes. Why do grapes make my mouth dry? That I don't know. That's interesting. I've never heard of grapes making somebody's mouth dry. That's interesting. Do you get that with any other kind of fruit? I kind of wonder. I'm curious about that. I've never heard that before. Look, I got these resistant bands. Wow, I got a lot of work. Let's get busy with them bands. Let's do it. Not pig testes. True. I'm like, man, y'all eating, these are grown men out here eating testicles? I'm like, we ain't out here doing that. What? Let me tell you something. If somebody say, yo, we getting together, we gonna eat Thanksgiving, you know what I'm saying? We got turkey booty hole and testicles. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna be out here just eat some mangoes, some grapes or something, some fruit, maybe some sweet potato or something. I can't get down with all of that. That's too much. I can't be doing all of that. All right. I don't want to eat anything that is similar to something that has grown inside my body. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be eating organs of other, like, I don't want to do that. That's too much. It's kind of nasty to me. I immediately think body odor. That's what I think. You know what I'm saying? Like, be careful. You smell like what you eat. So that's a sanitary thing. I'm like, look, hygiene, folks, hygiene, okay? Hygiene is very important to me when it comes to nutrition. Hygiene. All right? I live in the city and I'm growing 20 fruit trees currently in containers. How you growing 20 fruit trees in the city? We gotta see what that looks like. Hold on. All right, do you have a good night heading to bed? Yeah, I know it's getting up to that bedtime, huh? Yeah. So, we still going strong over here. Eating plants, eating fruit. Feeling great. I'm like, look, I'm a lifer, folks. High carb all day, all right? Carbon up all day. Can you talk about how to get vitamin B12? Oh, well, vitamin B12, you can get vitamin B12 either through supplementation, you can get it through nutritional yeast, you can get it from organic produce, you can get it from fortified plant-based milks, you can get it from fortified coconut yogurt or cashew yogurt. There's a lot of different sources of B12 you can get. Now, B12 is made by bacteria typically found in fresh water sources. Now, that bacteria can actually make it into your fruits and then actually produce that B12 inside your fruits, right? And you need very small amounts of it, right? We're talking micrograms per day. So it is found in organic produce. So you'll have like a lot of, raw vegans on a fruit-rich diet, and they're like, I don't even supplement with B12. And my B12 levels are fine. And I heard that and I was like, wait, what, how? Right? I thought B12 wasn't found in fruits. It turns out it's not exactly true. Now, the fruits don't themselves make the B12, but the bacteria does. So that's the caveat there. So there's that bit of nuance. But to be on the safe side, I'm like, look, our water is heavily desalinated, so we don't get access to that that bacteria in the way that we should, because our environment is heavily sterilized as far as our food and our water system. So supplementation, B12 is cheap. You don't even need to supplement with it every day. You can do it once a week, twice a week, something like that. You don't need a whole lot. But I like to use nutritional yeast because I like to use it in sauces and soups and things like that. Right? So that's my deal there as far as B12 is concerned. How do you take the chlorophyll and what does it do for you? So I like to do liquid chlorophyll. Liquid chlorophyll is this beautiful green liquid. They usually add a little bit of peppermint to it, right, for flavor, because it smells like veggie, earthy, kind of seawater a little bit. Chlorophyll kind of smells like, right? It's a mild smell. I've never had any chlorophyll. It's not like the ocean, really. I mean, maybe a little bit, because it depends. Some of the chlorophyll they get from chlorella, for example, and that's the one that smells like that. Chlorella is a type of algae. What does it do for you? It helps to increase hemoglobin. It helps in red blood cell production. It helps to decongest your lymphatic system. It's a deodorizer, right? So if you got some BO going, you got some bacterial overgrowth, chlorophyll definitely helps with that. So it's a great hygiene tool. It's good for energy production, things like that. Chlorophyll is pretty much found in all of your plant-based foods with a green pigment, right? So that's where your leafy greens, whether it be your watercress, kale, spinach, romaine lettuce, all that kind of stuff, it comes with that. Your kiwis, your spirulina, your chlorella, right? Different types of sea moss, right? So it comes with that. Just doing natural chlorophyll, no Amazon ones. Yeah, I mean, you naturally get chlorophyll from food, so you don't really need to supplement with it. Do you have any book recommendations for those of us interested in health and wellness? How Not to Die is definitely a good one, I would say. I would start there. That covers the basics pretty well. The Dirty Dozen. Right, I often suggest that one a lot. Too many almonds will kill you. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about kill you. Well, you know, the funny thing is, I think the Anthony Chaffee guy, he mentioned about almonds, right? Cyanide poisoning. And it's like, yeah, you got to eat like 9,000 calories worth of almonds to actually get any significant degree of cyanide poisoning, right? I mean, it's just not, you don't have to eat pounds of it, right? It's just no, that's why I say, you know, the dosage makes the poison. Nobody out here just casually eating a handful of almonds or even a cup of almonds and just getting cyanide poisoning. It's not a thing. So if you're going to say, oh, cyanide poisoning, I would never have my kids eat almonds because of the cyanide. I'm like, word. So just kids just out here dying from cyanide poisoning from eating almonds. Word. Do you have any data to support that? No. Well, then you probably shouldn't be saying that then, right? Because, I mean, hey, these are evidence-free claims at this point, right? So I could just be like, hey, look, if you eat six testicles within a 4-week time frame, Martians are gonna come visit you in your house in the middle of the night and abduct you, right? I can just make evidence-free claims too. Of course, the Martians claim is a bit more of an interesting claim, but it works for me. A guy did a watermelon fast for like 150 days, and he says he doesn't shower or brush his teeth anymore. I don't know about all of that. Yeah, I don't know about all of that. Look, people say some wild, crazy stuff for carnivore diets, and people say wild, crazy stuff talking about, I just eat watermelon for 150 days and I don't brush my teeth or shower. I mean, you don't necessarily have to brush your teeth and shower. You don't have to. You should. Right? I don't play around when it comes to hygiene. I'm not trying to hear about all of that, not brushing your teeth and not shower and stuff. I ain't trying to hear all about all of that. We don't play around when it comes to hygiene. All right, y'all. Did we do it? Did we cover it? We are people of the sun. True. Hey, brother Tribe Noir from New Zealand. Cross movement, what's going on? Good to see you in here. All right. We had a good showing out here tonight. We showed out tonight. Folks, if you haven't hit the like button yet, hit the like button. I didn't really see too many dissenters here tonight. You know, like I want to rib the meat people. They come in here and be like, "You were wrong, buddy. You're gonna see your knees are gonna be heating, and your knees are gonna be hurting from all that broccoli. Your knees are gonna hurt from that spinach, cause of the oxalates. You wait and see." He says he doesn't smell. I mean, look, people who smell real bad, a lot of the times they can't smell themselves. Will you do all fruit again? Yeah, I'm gonna get back into it in the summer. Look, I went through some heartbreaks. This fall and winter season, I went through some heartbreaks. Okay, I got some mangoes, and the mangoes, they pranked me real bad, and I was hurt. And then I got, you know, the last cantaloupe that I ate, it tastes like a cucumber, right? And it was brutal. Now, I've never tasted cucumber that was, I've never tasted cantaloupe that wasn't sweet. This is the first time, and it kind of shook me a little bit. I was a little disappointed. So yeah, I took some L's. I had some grapes. The grapes taste good, but the texture was off. You know what I mean? I was kind of like, what's going on with the fruit, man? This is kind of concerning. So I fell back on my red lentils a little bit. You know what I mean? I got into my red lentil soup with my steamed broccoli. That's been coming in clutch for me lately. But when the summertime, springtime, when the fruits start rolling back in the season, oh, let me tell you something. I'm bringing out the big bowl. I'm bringing out Philip. I'm going back to Philip, the fruit bowl. Philip is this giant, big fruit bowl. It's not really a fruit bowl. It's a big salad bowl, but I use it as a fruit bowl. So I'm gonna start breaking that out again. I would fill that thing out. I would eat like 5 or 6 pounds of fruit at a time in that thing. Right. So I'm ready for that season to come back around, because the cold weather and the cloudiness with it getting dark out around 5 o'clock, I'm not really feeling that. You know what I mean? I don't like that. That's not really my thing. So, lentil preference, green versus red and black. Yeah, I'm a fan of the red lentils. I like the taste. I like the mildness of it. It cooks quick, good nutrient profile, nice texture. So that's generally the thing. I mean, look, I like all lentils. But look, I'm on a red lentil kick. You know what I mean? They're convenient. They taste good. Good texture. I like them. I rock with them. And then at some point in time, I'll get on a green lentil kick. You know what I mean? I got to start bringing back in sweet potato, where I do my whole sweet potato a day routine. You know what I mean? So, but by any means, we're keeping the carbs up. We're keeping the carbs up, right? So we're not getting below 300 grams of carbs a day. We're not getting below that. Right? So yeah, that's what's going on my end. We said, so what am I currently eating? Yeah, I mean, it's red lentils, broccoli, overnight oats, bananas, apples, grapes, whatever fruits I can get, tangerines, grapefruit, right? Tender leafy greens. Those are my primary foods right now. Beans don't create mucus in the body. No. I think that if you're eating, oh yeah, and I do sunflower seed kernels on my oat pudding in the mornings. But yeah, so if you're eating beans and you get mucus, you got a gut health issue, either a gut health issue or a food allergy. So you would want to find out, like, okay, you may want to get an allergy test. Right now, certain beans, like the reason too why I'm a big fan of red lentils is because I get a lot of people who come to me for help with gut health issues, and red lentils, they hit every time. Nobody ever has issues with red lentils. Sometimes I put chickpeas in people's plans. They have problems. Sometimes people have problems with red kidney beans or black beans. Some people do, some people don't. But with the red lentils, it's a hit every time. Never any issues. But yeah, if you get any kind of digestive issues with legumes, what you may want to do, you know, you want to make sure they're soaked thoroughly, you cook them thoroughly, and then you can run them through the blender, and you can actually make like a bean soup. So you take the beans, you throw it in the blender, and you add your seasonings, a little bit of water for consistency, and you blend that up, make it nice and creamy, and then boom, you can add your greens to it. You can do some sliced avocado. That's what I've been doing. I've been hitting avocado pretty religiously. I do like a Haas avocado a day. But yeah, so doing that, you know, so that right there. So I've been on a vegetable bouillon and curry bean soup. That's hitting for me. I'm referring to gas or bloating or mucus, any of those issues. But yeah, gas and bloating, right? The whole running them through the blender thing, that pretty much fixes the whole gas and bloating thing. Nobody really has an issue when they do that. Are lentils alkaline forming? Yes, they are. All right, so real quick, as far as alkalizing the body, there are 5 alkalizing minerals that you need in your diet in order to really alkalize your body. And your body is going to balance out its pH level on its own, even if you have an acidic diet. But the thing is that that's not free. That's a stressor if your body has to do all of that work to be able to maintain that. So you use food as leverage so your body doesn't have to work so hard. It's a big part of what food is to make your body's job easier, right? So the 5 alkalizing minerals, we got potassium, calcium, magnesium, manganese, and iron. Those are the 5. So legumes, like lentils, they possess all 5. All right. And then when you mix that in with like your mustard greens, kale, spinach, whatever the case is, that is also, that's like the perfect meal right there. And then if you add in like sweet potato or any kind of yams, then you get those trace minerals in. You can get your iodine in, your selenium in, more your copper, zinc, manganese, all that kind of stuff. So that's a good, nice, rich, carb-dense meal right there. It's brain fuel. So you can just straight up eat fruit all throughout the day, and then you get that one meal that's just carb-heavy. Greens, your tubers, and your legumes. Boom, right? And that's more of like a high raw way of eating. And it's easier for people to eat that way too. You know, you get really good sleep quality eating like that also. But if you're gonna do, you can do the reverse. So you can do overnight oats, and you can do overnight oats or like oat pudding, and you slice bananas, strawberries, blueberries, goji berries all up in there. You add sunflower seed kernels to it or hemp seeds and whatnot, and make a nice Buddha bowl out of that. You can add coconut yogurt to it if you want. To get the extra probiotics, vitamin E, and all this kind of stuff, essential fatty acids. And then you just have your fruits throughout the day. Your 4 pounds of watermelon, your 2 to 3 pounds of grapes, your 6 kiwis or whatever the case is, your 2 pounds of mango or 3 pounds of mangoes, whatever the case is, and you just carb up through the rest of the day doing that. And then you have your avocado with your pumpkin seed kernels and leafy greens at night before bed, right? So that's another good way to do it. And there's a lot of different examples of the ways that you can eat. That's just a few, right? You say you don't do well with overnight oats and legumes. Yeah, you got some. That sounds like you got some gut health issues. Like you got some digestive issues. And if that's the case, with the legumes, you may want to puree them in the blender, or you just may want to just have a fruit dominant diet, period. But it depends on what your gut health issue is, how you're prepping your meals, and it depends on what else you could be eating, right? So yeah, it really depends. You may need to just add more probiotic rich foods in your diet. You may need to add things like miso or kimchi, sauerkraut, coconut yogurt, things like that into your diet. And just juice and do fruits, right? Where you're just throughout the day you're eating bananas, grapes, apples, and any type of citrus fruits throughout the day. And just fruiting it up. Yeah, rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah, you got a lot of oxidative stress going on through your body. You got gut health issues, so you definitely got to put them probiotics in your diet. The fruits definitely work. I don't know. I wouldn't say about all like the leafy greens. You could do some leafy greens, probably like 4 cups a day, maybe. With the sauerkraut or kimchi, things like that mixed in. Sliced cucumber. Pumpkin seed kernels, that kind of thing, but pretty much just fruiting it up for the rest of the day, right? Or just do straight up fruit fast where you're just eating, grapes, apples, whatever kind of fruits you can get, bananas, things like that, right? But you got to get that inflammatory stress down big time. So you may need to make some lifestyle changes as well. Also, whatever medications you are taking, that may have a compounding effect as well. Oh, you're good with the fruits, but you need to regain some weight? Yeah, I mean, that's just a matter of just eating enough. But the thing is that you got to get them oxidative stress levels down. Because, I mean, if you get rheumatoid arthritis, that means that you're in the red for a very prolonged period of time. You've been dealing with massive levels of oxidative stress throughout your body. So you may want to take like a food sensitivity test and get a blood test to see, get a better picture and understanding of what's going on in your body. But chances are, I would say that food sensitivity test, that allergy test, that right there comes in clutch. That's a test you're going to want to run. All right. Oh, I did a gut health stream, by the way. You may want to take a look at my gut health stream, because when people come to me with autoimmune issues, right? Any kind of arthritis, hormonal issues, that's a gut health issue. Right? Real quick too, by the way, there is a link in the description where you can book a call with me. All right? So you can get like a consultation with me. You go in the link in the description, you can book a call with me. All right? So that's where we have a full 60 minutes. And we can talk about all your issues. We talk about what to eat, when to eat. We could talk through your issues to find out like what kind of gut health issue you have, how you should structure your diet, what type of training you should do, and all that kind of stuff, right? So definitely hit the link in the description to book that call. All right. Anybody who's had that call with me, they'll tell you them calls are a game changer. And what I'm doing now too, and if you want to do this, I can record the call for you and then send you a video recording of the call. So you can reference back to it. So you don't need to be writing all kind of stuff down and taking notes in the call. I can just record it and then send you a link, a Google Meet link to it to record it. That's fine. You in Jamaica. Look, I mean, this is the beauty of the internet. All right, but you know what? You're in Jamaica, so that's perfect, right? So you'll be able to get things like soursop and all kinds of stuff. So that's phenomenal that you out there. Question for you, brother, please. 6'8", hard gainer at about 240 pounds. Should I focus on about 4,000 calories a day? Shoot, yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. 6'8", man, let me tell you something. When you are 6'8", you got a lot of length to fill out. But if you want to gain weight, high intensity, low volume training. All right. So heavy resistance training, low volume, high intensity. All right. So the focus should be getting strong. And that's how you keep that weight on, because the cleaner you eat and the more you carb up, you're going to improve your metabolism. But the thing is that when you at that 240, you might be ripped at 240, or you may be real skinny, because the thing is that when you eat clean and you drop all that body fat, it's going to show you what your actual lean mass is like. So I get a lot of people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm on a raw vegan diet and, I want to gain weight because I'm getting too skinny. And it's like, you got to put that muscle mass on, right? What you need to do is you need to make sure that you're adequately fed and that you're training, you're engaging in hypertrophy, strength training. And you're dedicating a full calendar year to getting as strong as you possibly can within that year. And that's how you're going to gain an additional 20, 24 pounds of lean mass. You might gain, it depends, if you're really consistent, you can gain 20, 24 pounds of lean mass. I know for me personally, within my first year of lifting, I went from like 135 pounds, soaking wet with 2 bricks in my pockets, to like 160 pounds. Next year after that, I gained more weight, ended up being like 170 and change. Next year after that, it was like 178, 180, somewhere around that. For me personally, I hit a peak weight of like 193 pounds at like 5'9". Right? So we have a capacity to really gain that muscle mass. If you're underweight, though, you have more of a propensity to gain that mass, but you got to put in the work, because you can't just do the clean eating on the way up. It's not really how that works. Not unless you just start adding a whole bunch of fat in your diet, right? Where you just start crushing avocados or something. Right. So, and I guess I could talk more about weight gain and whatnot in my stream, because I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been really skinny, I've been really heavy, and I've been really lean. Right. So I went from here up to here and back to here. Right. And I've done it non-vegan. I've done it vegan. I've done it high raw vegan. I've been able to replicate these results repeatedly. And I have the pictures up on my Instagram to prove it. Right. So if you scroll through my Instagram and whatnot, you see, oh, I was putting in some work. So yeah, building that lean muscle mass, because look, either your body is made of either lean mass or fat mass. So when you talk about gain weight, what kind of weight do you want to gain? All right. So yeah, definitely book that call with me. Hit the link in the description. Like the stream if you like the stream. This is a good one. I think this is a productive conversation today, y'all. I appreciate you tuning in. I do this every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And I think that is pretty much it. I do personalized diet and training plan as well. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely you can hit my link tree. That is also there's also a link to that in the description of this video. So having said that, folks, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch y'all next Monday night.